All right, we're live. Hello.
Hi.
It always takes a second for people to come in, but for anybody who is already here and watching, welcome, my friend on this side of me, Christina.
Hi. I know everything's opposite. I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, it's like, wait, here? Nope, she's over here. Oh, good. So for those of you who don't know Christina, if you haven't heard of Christina, first of all, you're missing out because she's freaking awesome. We actually compete against each other in the PGA circuit. So Christina teaches at she teaches like 800 different teams, and one of those is the University of Missouri Winter Guard Ionic, and that's kind of where we're up against each other actually in the same class.
Independent A.
Yeah. So Christina, tell us about yourself. So how did you get started in color guard?
I actually got started in color guard by complete accident. I didn't ever mean to join color guard. I had a friend in high school who wanted to audition, and she didn't want to go by herself. So I was like, oh, I'll go with you. And it was so much fun. Just swinging flags around a gym. And so, almost 20 years now, I've just stuck with it. I did it all through high school, all through college, did it independently, and then started coaching in 2008, and I've been coaching ever since. And like you said, I have a number of teams. We have middle school team, high school team, college team that all work in harmony together. And yeah, that's kind of my history.
So that like that, how does those programs feed each other then? So you said you have like the middle school and a high school and a college team. Do they feed into each other pretty well?
Actually, funny story. So it was almost 10 years ago, I think, that I started the middle school program, and I started with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And one of my 6th graders from my first program ever is now on Ionic.
Oh, that's awesome.
So cool. And I have another girl who was on the high school team who is now on Ionic. So yeah, it is starting to finally get there after all of these years where kids are filtering in, which is really neat to just watch her from 11 years old to college.
When did you start the middle school and the high school teams? How long have they been?
I actually started coaching at a certain high school, Rockridge High School here in Columbia in 2008. My husband, who is a band director, which is super convenient.
Convenient, Mary.
Super convenient. He switched high schools. They opened a new high school called Battle High School in Columbia. And so he moved over here to be the head band director, and I just kind of followed him. And so that school opened 2013. And so we started the high school program here in 2013. And when we started it, we weren't going to have any kids. So the year before that school opened, we had to start the middle school program. So we've been doing the middle school program since 2012. And then the high school program started the year after that.
That's amazing. And like you said, watching somebody go all the way through all those programs. Wow. I can't even, we just started our middle school program this year. So I've been watching all of your stuff and being like, okay, what did Christina do? How did Christina do it? Because we're trying so hard, and it's a weird time, of course, which we'll talk about. But trying to get all that going and seeing how your program has had that success is it's awesome.
It exploded. Awesome. I wasn't expecting it. There was, several years where we had, maybe 10 kids or so. And then one year we had 32. We're like, we need 2 teams. We're going to have to split this up. And then next year we had 50. And so it was completely 6th graders. And then we had a varsity that was 7th and 8th graders who had all spun the year before. This year we're smaller because of COVID. Obviously, we want to make sure that we have social distancing and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it was really cool to watch it grow. But it did take 8 years. It did take quite a bit of time.
It does. And I think that's something that people don't really always understand is that like these programs that are around, it's not like they just pop up out of nowhere and then they're suddenly successful. A lot of times, how many guards have we seen in our circuit that show up and they're there for a season or two and then they just fold because they're not sticking with it. They hit some rough patch and then they just say, forget about it. It's a lot of work to run an independent program, especially. And I
think independent is a special mix of hard, just simply because you're not affiliated with anything. So you have to start from scratch. You have to figure out where you're rehearsing, where your equipment's coming from, where you're even recruiting kids from. Because you might have, a ton of kids who are, I want to do an independent guard, and you start one, but where are those kids 3 years from then? And where are you getting new kids? And so it's just like a special unit of heart, I feel like, to start an independent. We're lucky that we're with the university. We have so much support with the university that has helped us, maintain and grow over the years that we've been doing it, for sure.
Yeah. So those of you who are watching, if you guys have questions or anything you want to say, I can put comments up on the screen. So if you guys have anything you want to come and comment on, make sure you're on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, and we can pull your comments up on the screen. If you have questions, we will answer your questions. If you have questions for Christina, if you have questions for me, whatever is up, just let us know and we will get to them. So talking about Ionic now,
yeah,
what made you decide to reboot the Winter Guard at the zoo? Because for all those people who don't know, I went to the zoo and I was on the Winter Guard the very last year they had a Winter Guard. They folded their guard program after that, and basically you've brought it back. So I've been like, hallelujah, my alma mater has a team again. So what made you decide to want to do that, and like how did you go about that process?
That was kind of an accident too. I'm really not a spontaneous person, I promise, but I went to Mizzou and I was on the zoo guard and absolutely loved it. I did it for all 5 years that I was there. I was a super senior, and I was always bummed that they didn't have a Winter Guard. And so I actually traveled to St. Louis and was on an independent team out of St. Louis when I did independent. And traveling every single weekend, I'm like, this is something you would think a university that's that large would be able to have. But whatever, graduated, got married, had kids. And every summer they do this like showcase where the color guard, the drumline, they come in and they perform for the community of whatever they learned over the summer. And so I had a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old, and I thought my 2-year-old daughter loves the flags and loves dance. And so I thought, let's just take them and we can go see the color guard. And my husband, who I said was band director, is also a percussionist. So I was the guard person that married a drummer.
Classic.
And so we're like, yeah, let's take the kids. It'll be fun, like Sunday afternoon thing. And we showed up, and this color guard, I don't remember how big it was. I don't know how big it was when you were there. I think you just graduated right before me, right?
I wasn't very far ahead of you at school.
So I left in 2000. I started in 2005.
Okay. Yeah, I was just a year ahead of you. And I actually, so I was there for 5 years also. It was by choice. Yeah. It wasn't forced. It was by choice.
We do so much. We just want to stay that extra.
Exactly. I was not in band all 5 years though, because I was like, which is weird. I was like a drum corps girl, but then I was like the Winter Guard girl. And so like the marching band thing in between, I was kind of like, eh. So I did marching band like my first year. And then I just kind of was like, I don't know. That's not for me. Yeah. And then it kind of went from there. And then when we didn't have the Winter Guard anymore, it was like, well, now what do I do?
Right. Well, I showed up and there were 11 kids spinning. And I was like, I was a lot bigger when I was there. And I'm going to say I showed up and like, they were terrible. They were great. Like they had, they were accomplishing, they were doing pregame, they were doing everything that they learned, fine. But I just remember thinking like, what happened? And, how can we, being a color guard person, how can we make this more a part of our community, and how can we grow this? Because we have a college of like 30,000 people. How do we have 11 right now? And so I'm thinking all of this while they're performing, and my husband and my kids are just watching. And we went home and we're lying in bed, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I remember my husband is a saint and I love him to death and he is amazing. I rolled up to him and I said, Mizzou needs a Winter Guard program. Like, I think if these kids were trained year round and there were more things for them to do, I think we could get more kids. Like, I think we could recruit. And my husband was like, you keep saying we. And I was like, I just think they need a Winter Guard. And he was like, and I'm guessing that you're the one that needs to do it. And I was like, I don't know anybody else.
Right. Well, that's the thing about a college town is like people don't stay always. No. Like they go to college and then they graduate and then they go wherever they're going for their job.
Yeah. And that's really hard. We have, 3 high schools here in town. All 3 high schools have great color guard instructors. And I'm not saying we're the only color guard people here in town, but it's hard to find people that are here and stay. All my coaches are typically from my college or from Mizzou. Right. And once they graduate, it's like a cycle of, new coaches. and they're all fantastic. But yeah, nobody really sticks around. So I was like, well, I went to Mizzou. I've been directing for a while. I think if they'll let me, this is something I could do. And so I remember I called one of the people over at the School of Music and just set up a meeting with, you know, the directors of the School of Music and just my idea. And I was like, I'm going to do this. And then they were like, well, let's think about it. And then about a month or so later, they came back and they were like, have at it. So that's how it was, just like by chance that it kind of unfolded the way it did.
That's awesome. I got distracted over here. Someone said something about being a TikTok mom. Like, it's funny, like watching people online. Like, do you have kids? Like okay, I say kids. You have your own kids and you are a mom. You have students who call you mom, you know, especially like you're saying that you have them all the way through.
Yeah, they say that I'm their mom. They don't call me mom.
Okay. Well, that's
unless they're like sarcastically calling me mom in a way to like poke it.
All right, one of the comments just distracted me with that. Like it happens. It happens. So, okay, so you got Ionic, and basically the university was like, okay, let's do this and make it happen. How then did you go about, because I get asked this question all the time. Mm-hmm. How do I start independent? How do I start independent? So you've got backing from the university, but what was your next steps basically? How did you go about saying, okay, I gotta get students, I gotta do this, what was your kind of mindset of how you were going to set this up? Because like the culture wasn't even there at that point. No. There wasn't even a culture of like hardworking color guard performers or anything like that.
Yeah. And they were super hardworking in the fall, but I think the most of the girls that had been on the fall team weren't either knew winter guard from like high school perspective or never did winter guard because some high schools don't have it. So really my mindset going into the first year was we are going to do the bare minimum, because I had a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old. And so I couldn't do a whole heck more than the bare minimum because I also had, you know, middle school team, high school team. And so I said, well, there's certain weekends that I have the high school team already scheduled. So I'll just do the college team in the same weekend. And I used the same show designer for the high school that I used for Ionic so that they were already in town. And we just kind of doubled up on everything. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think the first year we rehearsed once a week. And yes, it like I said, it's the bare minimum. It was not nearly enough. But it was like to get everybody's toes wet and to, you know, introduce, here's what we're going to do at the university. And it wasn't anything spectacular or anything special. It was just a trial year, if that makes sense. Like I was nervous about going into this and just going at it 100 miles an hour. I'm like, I had never done, you know, like a college level independent before. And so I'm like, we need to be slow and steady and we'll get there, but it's not going to be the first year. And in the year we ended up dead last in our division. And I remember I was just like, we need to do more. So the next year, of course, we, you know, added more rehearsals and, you know, built from there to where we are now. But it was not fast from the get-go. It took a while.
I feel like though that's the mindset that you have, that you said, where you were like, okay, we start with the bare minimum and now we need to do more. Like that's probably the thing that sets Ionic apart from some of these other guards that have just like come up for a year or 2 or 3 and then just kind of fell back because they were like, they came up, they got dead last and they were like, we'll try one more time. They try one more time and then they just give up. And I think that hardworking and understanding of like, you're building a program, you're not just putting on one show for 1 year, you're actually building a whole culture around this. And you're creating this sort of like understanding of this is what the winter guard is. This is what we're going to do year after year. And that's kind of bringing people to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you can go too far the other way, which is, I can tell you year 2, that's exactly what we did, right? Last we did the bare minimum and I'm like, okay, here we go. And we went too far. And we had so many kids who hadn't done winter guard before that by the time it hit, I want to say February, they were checked out. And so you had, you know, some of the team pushing, and some of the team that was like, I'm done. I'm just going to coast the rest of the, you know, season. And so that year we got all the way to 4th place, but we were 0.01 points away from 3rd. And we're not medal chasers by any means, but when you are that close, it hits hard. And so then it was a whole nother like, okay, how do we pull back? But how do we make sure that the kids are still as invested? And so you can, it's a fine line. It really is. And you have to know your kids, you have to know your circuit, you have to know your program and all that to really get to where you want to be, for sure.
We have a really good question here in the comments. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up. Where do you rehearse? This is from Maria Sperling. She says, where do you rehearse? Is it at Battle? She taught Mizzou guard and winter guard back in the early 2000s. This was like right before I got there, Maria. Then Joie de Vie, and then rehearsal space was the hardest thing. They had to basically pay for gym rental. So where does Battle rehearse? Where does Ionic rehearse that?
Actually, side note, I did Joie de Vivre. It was after Maria left, but that was before I started traveling to St. Louis. We rehearse at Battle. We're super lucky that we're able to get space here because I coach here. And it's never really been an issue. It's always when I do schedule gym space, I'm always take it away if anybody else needs it. You know what I mean? If basketball needs it, if wrestling needs it, because we're not a priority because we're not part of the school. And so we take gym space when we can get it. But it's always been, the school's always been really, really good for us. So, yeah.
That's awesome. If it's any consolation, I wish I would have done Joie after Mizzou guard folded because I didn't realize how much I needed winter guard in my life. And I kind of took the whole folding of the guard as a sign that I needed to get away from color guard. And
no, you never need to get away from color guard.
What was I thinking? I was crazy. Okay. Yeah. Maria says go Joie.
Yeah. I only did it for 1 year. And then I started traveling to St. Louis because I'm from St. Louis originally. So it was kind of nice that I could go every weekend and stay with my parents and see my family while also competing and getting away from Columbia for a little bit.
So, okay, now I have to dip into this side backstory here because we met before we even knew we met this you're talking about in St. Louis. I actually auditioned for them and it would have been my age out year.
Yeah.
I wound up with a wonderful shoulder injury. And by wonderful, I mean, no, I actually was injured before I auditioned, but my injury was from drum corps and it prevented me from marching my age out year of drum corps. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to march my age out year of winter guard, thinking I was just going to magically heal over the course of, a season or whatever. Yeah. And I did not. So I could not actually do winter guard, but we met and I just remember the director. I remember the director being like, you need to go get this girl's number because she lives in Columbia and you live in Columbia and you guys could ride together. And I was just I'm not riding with somebody I don't know. What are you thinking?
I remember you at auditions.
Yeah, I was like, I bet we would have been BFFs if
absolutely. Well, it's so funny because the director is the reason I ended up traveling because after championships, he saw me and he was like, hey, I know you're on this team, but if you ever consider traveling, so yeah, that's what I.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So okay, we got a little off track, but that's all. It's all good.
The good days, good old days.
So now let's talk this season. So we kind of been talking about how we got to this point, but so now this season's ridiculous.
It is.
It's COVID is here. For people who haven't been keeping up with winter guard stuff, basically all of our winter guard stuff is virtual now.
Mm-hmm.
There's no in-person contests in our area. Our circuit is virtual. The WGI circuit is virtual. So what are you guys doing the same? What are you doing different? What's your plan and your deal for this season?
Well, first, our show designer, his name is Zach, and I are really good friends, and we're both very stubborn people. And so it looked like COVID wasn't going away. We're we're still doing it. We don't care. We're still doing something because we just can't. We didn't really get to do that much fall guard, and so giving up winter is going to be very challenging for us. So we pretty much said, we're going to do it no matter what. We're going to do something. And so we had plans A through Z. If this happens, we're going to do this. If this happens, we're going to do this, and all these different plans. And numbers started going down and we thought, oh, we're totally in the clear. And then numbers started going up again in like September, October. But what we've decided to do, we're still doing a full show. Virtually, we'll videotape it. So we'll do, competitive through WGI and our local circuit MCCGA. But this year we've employed a buddy system, I guess you could call it, or a pair system. So pretty much everyone on the floor has a partner, and they both, like, it's not an alternate thing where, you're in if you're good, but if not, then this person's in. It's 100% equal share time as long as everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. And so if one of the partners or pairs gets quarantined or has COVID and has to be out, then the other one can step in and there's not a hole in the show. Weapons don't have partners, but everyone except for like, I think a handful of kids is still training on weapons. So if this weekend, we have a staging weekend actually starting at about 6:00 tonight. We're going to start staging some more. We have a weapon girl who is on quarantine. And so one of the flag pairs will go and learn that spot, and the partner will learn the flag spot, and then they'll kind of just learn each other's and cycle around is basically our plan. And so everyone has a show that they're going to learn, and then a show that they might have to learn if it's a competition taping weekend and we have a hole. So that's pretty much our grand plan. And so far, so good.
That's a lot of responsibility on the kids, on the performers. So like I say kids, like they're college students, but like to remember like all of this different stuff and be like, okay, is it this show this weekend? Is it this show this weekend? Do I have this equipment or do I have this equipment?
They are all doing so incredibly well. And I keep telling them like, thank you so much, because if it weren't for these kids, like we need a bridge between what we had and what we will have this year. And if these kids didn't step up and agree to this partner system and take on this much bigger responsibility for, I don't want to say just a virtual show, but everybody loves going to competitions.
Right.
All of these kids were like, so itching to perform and get back what they lost in 2020, beginning of the year, that they were like, okay, like we trust you. You tell us what to do. I hope they trust us. But yeah, they've been pretty gung ho and they've been working really hard, which is great.
That's so good. That's so good. So you're doing both WGI and MCCGA.
Yes.
And we will see you there because we're doing both as well. So
I
that's
saw you guys on the little list. Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as like, what are some other, like, have you been kind of scaling back your show or like going forward? Because I know I will say like a lot of what we're doing, like we're doing all of our normal training wise, but like used to be, we would really like be pushing at this point in the season. We would be really pushing. We'd be throwing lots of crazy tricks at them and giving them just a lot of stuff to practice. And we've really like taken that back some because of, they're having to deal with so much crazy stuff from, being a virtual school, being like, just so many things are different for everybody this year. Have you guys felt that or done anything with that as far as like your training being different or anything like that?
It's really hard to get our show designer to scale back. I love you so much, Zach. I do. This year, it's like, we don't have to travel. We should get giant props and stuff like that. I did not just say that.
We may have done the same thing.
Yeah, sorry. But I mean, as far as training goes, that was a huge thing. And we talked about this in our circuit meetings was this is the year that everybody needs to focus on education because everyone is going to be a video on a screen. And it's way, way, way more important that when we are face-to-face with our kids that we're training them, and much more important than show design and tricks and cool things. And so this was the first year, for the first couple of years, how I said we did the bare minimum, meaning it was like me, myself, and I. We hired a lot more staff this year and a lot more specialty staff. So we have somebody who is just focused on movement. And I know this is like normal for other color guards, but again, like this is year 4 for us. So we're still you're
still young enough as a guard that it's not always normal for those types of groups.
Yeah. And like just getting money to pay staff is one thing that we haven't had for a while. But now we have somebody that's specializing in movement that does dance class with the kids every weekend. And somebody who specializes in weapon that's coming in and just working with the weapons and just working with technique. And so we have a lot more staff that we've brought on just for the educational aspect and that I hope we continue doing over the next couple of years and can grow with that. But we've toned down a lot. I have to say toned down, but our show's not toned down. But we've definitely focused a lot more on education this year and making sure that the kids are getting a lot more technique and training for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it's still fun, obviously, for them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it.
Well, and I think a lot of the technique and training that we are giving them this year is making them better. So when we give them those harder, cool things, they're actually successful with them, which makes it even more fun.
Yeah.
Before it was, if you watched last year's show, we didn't really, there's nothing complicated. There's nothing super, super hard about it. And so the kids were like, we want more difficult things this year. We're like, well, if we get the training done, we can do that. And so that's been really fun for them, is to like be better trained, be able to do more difficult things on a consistent basis, which has been really nice.
So when you're talking about doing your training, and this, this is another topic entirely. So you're talking about doing your training. How much of your training do you focus on like equipment technique and things like that, body technique and all that, versus like focusing on like actually like, okay, we're going to work out, we're going to get stronger for this, we're going to increase our endurance? Or do you do that together? Is that just part of your, they're going to get endurance by working their technique over and over again?
They've actually gotten a lot of endurance just by having to wear a mask.
Yeah.
Because I've been super strict when it comes to COVID. I know I've seen, basketball teams and softball teams and wrestling just going out there without a mask on because they're doing athletic activity. And I won't let my kids, it freaks me out. And maybe it's safe when they're doing athletic activity to not wear a mask, but our kids have to. And so they're running around and they're doing show runs and they're doing technique and training and all of those things while wearing a mask. And so I feel like that's a lot of endurance building up just doing that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes with, movement this year, especially we've been focusing more on. And so their endurance is building up, just getting through an hour and a half dance class twice a week or twice a weekend, every weekend, yeah.
So how are your COVID restrictions affecting your show design? Are you having to are you doing like spaced out? Have you like cut out equipment exchanges and stuff like that? Like how is that affecting it?
Yeah, I call myself the COVID mom or the COVID police, because I will sit there in the stands as the show's being designed. And I remember at one point, someone said, "Oh, a lift," and I was like, "COVID, don't lift anybody." And that actually happened twice. I was like, "No lifts, don't touch anybody." But yeah, we purposely wrote the show for 18, although we have 24, because we want everybody to be able to be paired, and we want on a very large floor to have as much space as possible. I feel like the COVID restrictions change every day, but at one point it was like you can't be within 6 feet without a mask for 15 minutes or whatever. So there are certain moments in the show where people run past each other or whatever, but there's no real moment where they're just sitting there breathing on each other. But we do try to use as much of the floor and get them as spread out as possible. And again, I'm like, don't take off your mask.
we actually got masks for everybody. Like they all have our little masks with the Spintronics logo on them and everything. Cause yeah, that's just one thing. Sorry, it kind of stinks, but here it's something you can do. It's something people do. I've noticed you were saying something about like basketball teams, like not wearing masks and stuff like that. But there, I do see some that are setting a good example, and I try to repost them.
Yes.
Like in NASCAR, they wear masks, and I'm kind of like, in NASCAR, you're not up against each other you're in a car, buddy. You're in a car, and they're still having people wear masks. They're having the techs wear masks and the mechanics and everybody. So I'm kind of like, they're doing it. That's a good example. And then I've seen some good basketball teams that are doing it, and softball teams and stuff like that. So that's something also, I'm glad.
My thing is we've had plenty of kids that have, I can think of like 5 offhand that have gotten COVID, and none of them have gotten COVID from rehearsal, and none of them have given it to anybody at rehearsal. And I'm really proud of that. And maybe that's so silly to be proud of, but as a mom, I'm just like, no one is getting sick while I am, under my care. And so I'm super strict about it, or as strict as I can be, really.
That's so good. I'm glad you're like, yes, we're going to, and you're setting the example for the community. You're not just, it's not just that you're protecting, you're protecting them. That's awesome. And you're also setting the example, this is the level that you need to be at to keep everybody safe.
Yeah, and we did that all through fall too, like Marching Mizzou. Dr. Knops, who is the director of athletic bands at Mizzou, made sure that the band, if you're supposed to be 8 steps, you're going to be 16 steps, and breaking up the entire band of 350 into 2 smaller bands, because we just wanted to almost go above and beyond the guidelines as much as possible to keep the kids safe. We don't need anything getting shut down again.
No, please. I don't want any of that. I don't want any of that. It was, oh man, last season was so rough. How that's another thing I'm sorry I didn't put this in the preview questions, but I wanted to ask you about how many students from last year did you have come back to be on your teams this year? Like, do you know like a percentage or like a roundabout number?
I don't. I know we had good retention. Ionic, a lot of kids came last year from other cities, and we're a little bit older, so we did have some kids age out or just decide, some kids like had to go student teach or whatever. So a lot of the out of town kids didn't return, which is fine and expected, really. Our Mizzou kids, the kids that are out on campus, a lot of them came back, and so we had really good retention this year. And I think middle school we had a little bit less retention. High school was the same, but yeah. So far, it was good so far. I mean, I think everybody was ready to do something, no matter what it was.
Yeah.
And also a battle. I don't know if I mentioned this. Color Guard and Winter Guard's a class that I teach, so it's like on my roster, and they get a grade for it. So that helps a lot with retention, because they're like, well, if I can do Color Guard and get a credit for it, I'm going to do that.
Yeah. Oh man, that would be awesome, having Color Guard as a class.
Yeah, it's awesome getting to teach that. Like, I wake up in the morning and I just go to practice before I like teach my curriculum classes, which is kind of cool.
That's great. Oh man, I'm gonna have to ask you some more questions about that later and be like, hey, how do we make this happen? Oh gosh, that's so cool.
Okay. You need a lot of parents to write to your administration. That's what you need.
Okay.
I'll help you.
Okay. We'll just like draft it all up. Like, all right, here we go. Everybody sign this. So, what kind of advice? So a lot of our followers now are people trying to start their own guards. They're trying to just get started in teaching. And personally, I think this is a really good time to be starting something new, because we had the shutdown, everything happened, everything's been crazy, and now we've got new stuff going on. So what would the advice be that what would you give advice to these people who are like trying to just get their career kick started as instructors, or maybe they're trying to start a team at their school?
Yeah. Well, if you're trying to start a scholastic team, for sure, get to know the administration and get to know the athletic director, become very good friends with them, get them a gift basket, whatever. And talk with the band director, all of those things, and just kind of let them know your plans, talk about a budget, talk about, what resources are available to you. Same for the independent level. You have to figure out what resources you're going to have. And like we had mentioned before, it's not just about one season. And I think I had heard you say this before on like another live stream in the past, but a lot of people are like, oh, I have this great show idea. It's not, it's got to be more than 1 year. It's got to be more than one show. And so you have plans for, a 5-year goal, a 10-year goal. You have to think of things as large as how am I going to get kids to competition or all the way to Dayton or whatever, and as small as how many of this size bolt do I need for all of my flags? You have to think of every single little thing. So be prepared for that. Like, I have spreadsheets full of information in just great detail. And so if you're very much like a big picture person, like, oh, this sounds like a great idea in theory, you really need to break it down like to the nth degree, and then see if that's something that you still want to do. Because like I said, my husband is a saint, and I am gone a lot, and he is with 2 small children, now 3 and 5, all the time. But if it weren't for that support, there's no way I would be able to do it. And even at the high school level, I have so many, in middle school level, I have so many assistant coaches that support me and allow me to, float between being a mom and being a director, and they help me get stuff done. And the university gives me freedom to do, so much stuff with Ionic. And so if it weren't for other people being there to support me, I couldn't do this. So if it's something that you just kind of want to do yourself, it's going to be hard. And so you need to find more staff, more resources, any, connection you can make in the community to find rehearsal space, fundraise, find equipment, figure out how to recruit people, all of those things. You got to think about all of those things.
Yes. But I mean, basically what I'm hearing you're saying is you need a community behind you. It's not something that one person can do by themselves.
Oh, no. No, I would have failed by now. People that are with me all the time. Yeah.
Well, I have absolutely loved watching the successes that you have had at your high school, your Scholastic teams, and at Mizzou for obvious reasons. But I loved it, and I really, really hope that you continue to have success, even if it means beating us. But we're gonna try real hard. We're one of those.
That's all you can do. That's all you can do. That's all we do.
Exactly. It's one of those things like, and people actually, I get a lot of critique about like, how are you friends with the people you compete with? Why do you guys like sometimes we go out to ice cream with a competition or something. We went and had Taco Bell with one of the Missouri State guards a couple of years ago. And it was like, and people will sometimes criticize us, like people who aren't in that. They're like, oh, how can you be so friendly with people you compete against? I'm like, that's the only way to grow, I think, is to be friendly with the people that you compete with and like have these sort of conversations like, well, what's working for you and what's making you successful, and maybe some of that might work for me and maybe some of that won't work for me, but at least I can have a bigger picture and you can have a bigger picture and we can kind of like basically compete with each other and compete to the top and continue to make each other better. And I think that's the real goal of competition in my book is to continue to make each other better. So
there's an independent team out in Kansas City that I don't think is fielding anybody this year because of COVID and all that. But just last year, it was their first year and it was our third. We went down to Tulsa for WGI and I saw that they were there and I was like, man, we went through Kansas City. And I texted the director and I was like, next time we do this, we need to like meet, hang out and like have the guards meet each other. And and we always seem to be at the same competitions, especially WGI. And so it was always like, who's going to get it, and we're always congratulating each other and rooting hard for each other as a director. And this is another thing for anybody who wants to start a guard. You have to be selfless. It is not about you in any way, shape or form. Like I remember when I pitched Ionic, don't do this, but I remember when I pitched Ionic, they asked me at one point, like, how much do you want to get paid? I was like, I don't even think about that. Like it wasn't even about me making money. It was about me helping the community grow. You should get paid for working. And I did, thank God. But, it wasn't something that was on my mind because it's about growing the community. And if we want to grow the color guard community, you can't just hate on competition. Like you need to grow competition so that you grow. Like absolutely.
Yep. Oh man, I have some pretty good comments here coming in about this. So says, totally. Same goes for ballroom and drag. Oh, I absolutely love the sense of community in the drag queen communities because like they do compete. Like it's a competition, but like you learn from each other and you push each other to be better. And I absolutely love that.
It does me no good for my competition to be terrible because then why are my kids going to work hard? Like I need my competition to be solid so that my kids know that they need to work hard. Absolutely.
Yep. And Stephanie says here, it's a basic principle of sportsmanship. It really is. Like if you're not able to friendly compete with somebody, then you're not being a good sportsman about it.
Yeah. I teach my 5-year-old that. Like sometimes you don't win and it's okay. It's okay.
That's awesome. Well, it has been so great talking to you. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up. Is there any last minute advice or words of encouragement you want to give as we're going into this crazy COVID season?
I guess my word of encouragement is it's going to be awesome. Like I know it's going to be so different, but I'm super excited to log on to Flow Marching and see teams that I would never get to see before because I'm either with middle school and high school and college, I'm usually in warm up in some way or, trying to get a hot dog from the concession stand in the 5 minute half off. And so I'm going to see so many more teams and these kids I feel like are going to just be seen from such a bigger platform than just a single day competition. And so that's really cool. And to be able to get the color guard experience without necessarily having to travel to another city and stay the night and take up
You're
your
gonna save so much money.
and so much money. And especially for Ionic with college kids, it's like they still have homework and assignments. And like last week was finals. So it was like, we didn't have dance classes or anything. It was like, you guys need to study. And so to give them time to be home, be safe, be healthy, but still get that experience, I think it's gonna be great. And I'm really excited for it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, good. It's great. It's always so great to talk to you.
Yeah,
And oh, we will definitely need to do this again at some point. And
sure.
for everybody who's watching this on the replay too, make sure that you guys subscribe to all of our channels. Go over to what's your Instagram handle is Mizzou _ Ionic Guards.
Yeah, Mizzou _ Ionic Guards. And this Sunday we're actually having a question and answer session. All of myself and the captains are going to be on Zoom. So anybody who wants to come on Zoom with us and just ask us questions, it can be about Mizzou, it can be about Ionic, or just color guard in general. We're going to be there just talking to people. So
that's going to be a good time. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And the registration link's on our Instagram bio. So.
Okay. So go check out Christina's Mizzou _ Ionic Guards on, I can do this.
You do cool technology things?
I mean, I'm just making a comment and then I can pop it up on the screen. So now you can see Mizzou _ Ionic Guards. That's how you spell it. So guys, go follow Christina and follow the Mizzou Guards, and make sure you guys go pop in on that question and answer session. That should be a really good time with some great information, bringing you guys a lot of color guard value. So again, okay. Well, it's been great talking to you. And thank you guys, everybody who showed up and gave us some good feedback and good questions. And we will talk to you guys later.
Bye.